Ladies and gentlemen, we have a return guest, Randa Slim. She is the program director for Middle East for the Stimson Center. She was used to be at Johns Hopkins conflict resolution. She was there in where was that? Where was the conflict resolution work, Randa?
Uh, uh, I was at the Middle East Institute Conflict Resolution
Okay,
Program,
the
and
Middle East.
I'm a senior non-resident senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Institute at SAIS, Johns Hopkins.
Good. You're all over the place. So I like you very much, and I think our people who watch like you too. So the last time I talked to you, you were in Beirut, and
Correct.
it was right before the war started. And I said, "How are you doing?" And you said, "I'm doing just great." Tell us
Yeah.
what happened.
The war started on February 28th, and shortly thereafter, Hezbollah decided to join the war after the killing of the Iranian supreme leader. Uh, During during in the beginning of the
Right.
war, and so the area where we have our place in Beirut is fairly safe. But it's not that far away from the southern suburbs of Beirut, which were being pounded and hit. So in the middle of the night, we will wake up to major sounds of explosion in the southern suburbs of Beirut. And then what happened with us is that all the foreign airlines stopped flying into the Beirut airport, and our ticket was on Turkish Airlines. And so we had to find a way to get ourselves on the national carrier, which was still and is still the only carrier that's flying in and out of Beirut, the Middle East Airlines. We flew to Istanbul, and then we had to find our way out of Istanbul to fly back to Ohio through Frankfurt, from Istanbul through Frankfurt.
Well, were you lucky to get out of Beirut when you did?
Yes, yes, definitely, because as I said, only one carrier now is flying in and out of Beirut. So the number of seats that are available is not that big, and I reached out to the U.S. Embassy as U.S. citizens to see if there is any assistance. Well, the U.S. Embassy put out a message saying they are closed for business. They've recently reopened for consular services, very short period. But at the time when we were in Beirut, the embassy was closed. So basically, as a U.S. citizen, you have to find your way out of the place in conflict on your own without any assistance from your government.
Well, we have been hearing, or I've been reading, that Hezbollah has been greatly diminished. Is that
Yes.
true or is that false?
Well, we thought it was greatly diminished, right? But recently they have been able, once they decided to join the war in support of Iran, they have been sending quite few rockets and missiles across the border into Israel. And yesterday, in fact, they did it in coordination with the Iranian Revolutionary Guards in Tehran. So it was a coordinated attack between the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and Hezbollah. And they were able to move back into the area of Lebanon, which is southern of Litani River, which supposedly the Lebanese army has cleared it of Hezbollah presence and Hezbollah weapons. And they have been firing, their rockets and their missiles from that area. And so yes, I think we have underestimated their capacities and overestimated our decapitation of their forces in the past.
Well, Randa, what is your reaction now in terms of how the war itself is going?
Look, I look at Lebanon and I still have family. I have two siblings with their families. I have old aunts. I have friends, very close, many close friends. And so I'm on the phone and getting messages almost every hour from the country. And people are really very, very, very worried about the expansion of the war, because in the beginning of the war, it was mostly southern part of the country, which is southern Lebanon and maybe the southern suburbs. Now, recently, you have buildings in the heart of central Beirut, which are now being targeted, being hit because supposedly they host offices or storage for Hezbollah or whatever, and so you have now a major internal displacement crisis in the country. More than 700,000 people have been displaced at a time when the country has been reeling from this major economic crisis. They don't have many resources to deal with this major sudden internal displacement crisis. So when I was still in Beirut, I would walk by the seaside and you would see tents and people sitting on mattresses, foam mattresses with barely some blankets on the streets, whole families sleeping at night on the streets with some just blankets or in small tents. And I've been told since I left, the number has expanded. Now, the government has tried to create shelters. Unlike, for example, Israel, which has shelter, which has warning systems, Lebanon has never developed this infrastructure for dealing with wars. And so people are most of the time left to fend for themselves if they are displaced from their home and to find means of survival on their own.
Randa, have you been surprised by anything that you've seen happening inside of Iran that kind of surprised you about how they're doing? I mean, in terms of attacking their some of their neighbors or their allies. What's your sense been of that?
I know because many people are saying, including, the President Trump saying he was surprised by the fact that they were attacking their neighbors. But you know what? Before this war started, the Iranian leadership was very vocal and very clear about their war plan. And their war plan was, if they were to be attacked by the United States and Israel, that they are going to try to exact the highest cost from the allies of the United States, Israel, but also including the Gulf countries. They have said it. They were very, very open about it. Now, we somehow did not believe them because these countries, especially the Gulf countries, have been engaging for some years in a policy of rapprochement with Iran.
Yeah,
they
right.
have, in fact, they used a lot of their political capital with DC, with the president, to try to prevent the war from happening, in fact, and try to mediate the conflict. And so they were surprised. We were surprised, the United States, Washington, D.C., but the Iranians were very open from the beginning, before the war. This is what they were going to do. So it's basically a burn the bridges strategy. They did not care. It's their survival at any cost, at any means.
Once their supreme leader was killed, yet you saw a barrage of attacks that were pretty widespread. And the sense was that maybe perhaps they'd had a plan as to what they were going to do if they were going to be attacked. In other words, you attack us and we don't have to have our leader here. We've got the game plan as to how we're going to respond. Is that your sense of where this thing is today?
That is correct, Governor. Remember, there was a war last June, right? The 12-day war between the United States, Israel on one hand, and Iran. It lasted 12 days, ended up with a ceasefire. And then you had the negotiations started between the United States and Iran on the nuclear file. Their takeaway, now we know, the Iranian leadership takeaway from that war is to prepare for the next war. And by preparing for the next war is that the supreme leader delegated decision-making power across the system. And the Iranian regime, although the supreme leader holds a veto power over basically all decisions, but it is a regime of systems, of institutions. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guards play a major part in the system. The regular military plays also a part. The Basij, which is a volunteer militia, plays a part. The National Security Council plays a part. So he delegated, power. He delegated decision-making power in the event he were to be killed. And so, in a way, their takeaway from the last war in 2025 was to prepare institutionally for the next war. And that's what, and the game plan that you just referred to they put this game plan in place, and once the war happened and the supreme leader was killed, the game plan was kicked into gear.
Were you surprised that that Khomeini's son has been elevated to be the supreme leader? Do we have that right? Is that actually official? Has that happened? And were you surprised by that? And what does that mean?
No, it was announced. They have the body, the assembly of experts that's supposed to elect the next
Okay.
supreme leader, and it was announced that they've chosen it. However, I mean, today people have not seen him. People have not heard of him since his ascension to power. Today, supposedly a speech by him was broadcast by Iranian TV, but it was read on Iranian TV by somebody else. So until now, we don't know if he's still alive, if he's seriously injured. We don't know if he wrote the speech, who wrote the speech. So there are a lot of theories about really what's taking place. And so until we have proof of life, it's going to be difficult for people to believe that he's the one who is, making all these decisions. After all, if we look at, for example, the Taliban kept broadcasting speeches in the name of their leader for years after the leader was killed. They did not want to admit that he was killed. And so they kept broadcasting speeches in his name without revealing that he was killed. I'm not saying it's the same situation in Iran, but the fact that his first speech since he became supreme leader was just read on TV, and we don't have yet proof of life in terms of him reading it, his voice or his picture. There are a lot of theories about what's really taking place there.
Randall, what is their strategy? Are they just going to try to hang on? I mean, they've been, obviously, all of their operations have been devastated. And I want to get to the nuclear issue later, but what is their strategy now? To just get pounded as much as they can and not negotiate? What's your sense of what's happening inside that country?
So for them, victory is survival. So the fact that they can survive, that the regime can survive, despite all that has been, launched against it, that's victory. They don't have to defeat the other side because they cannot. The military might of the United States and Israel is something that they cannot, ever defeat. And so
what does survival mean, Randa? What does that mean?
It means that the regime does not fall apart. That there is no regime change. There is no internal revolution against the regime. That most of the structures of the regime are still intact. The heads at the helm of this structure might have been killed, but they can be replaced. But as long as they have territorial integrity, which is a big deal for Iran and for the regime, and as long as they have command and control structures in place, doesn't mean it doesn't matter if the supreme leader is in place, as long as they have command and control structure, especially of the revolutionary Iranian Revolutionary Guards. I think for them that's survival. And as long as they can keep the war on, they can keep exacting a higher cost of the enemy. In this case, by attacking the Gulf countries, that's what they have been doing, and impacting shipping lanes, impacting oil supply. Remember, the Strait of Hormuz is nearly closed right now. Through that Strait of Hormuz, 20% of all petroleum, supplies in the world pass through. And we're already starting to see that reflected in the increase in the prices at the pump, and it's going to natural gas at the same time. Liquefied natural gas gets transported through the Strait of Hormuz. That has been now shut down. Now, what's interesting part is that Iranian tankers are still going through the Strait of Hormuz, and they are carrying oil to whom? To the Chinese. So the Chinese are still getting their oil, whereas oil supplies for all other parts of the world are being disrupted. And the oil and the spike in the oil prices is going to also mean the Russians, who are still pumping oil and selling oil, meaning they are making more money.
Randa, so having been at Johns Hopkins and studying conflict, all those things, let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz and that body of water and the U.S. Navy. Are you surprised that the U.S. Navy has not been able to just command the straits to be open? In other words, I mean, we have the overwhelming firepower. We know how to deal with the mines that have been placed by the Iranians. What's the issue there? Has something failed in that area?
I think the issue is priorities. Is this a big priority for us, and how much is going to cost us? And to be very honest, in terms of, I mean, it takes how long to get one tanker through if it's escorted by the U.S. Navy? It takes like more than a week. I mean, I cannot, I cannot. I mean, I stand to be corrected on that. I mean, it takes a lot of time to get one tanker escorted, and it takes a lot of money to get it escorted, and a lot of assets. And so there is this fear also that they are started to laying down mines, in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right?
And if that's the case, it's going to take a long time to demine it again and to open it up for transport and shipping.
I've talked to people who were high up in the Navy uh, who have told me that, they believe that the U.S. should be controlling all those waters, and they're the
The
people.
waterways, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a surprise that we shouldn't we just be controlling those waters with the ability of our Navy to be as powerful as it is?
I would assume so. I would assume so. There is the other one. Remember, I mean, so far it hasn't yet been closed, and that's the Bab el Mandeb, right? Which is the Red Sea. That's another major shipping lane. And if the Houthis, who are allies and
Right.
partners of the Iranians, who have not yet joined the fray, if they decide to enter the war and close Bab el Mandeb, it's going to be very, 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 very hard to get all of this, you know, petroleum, liquefied natural gas, other kind of forms of shipping to get through. Yes.
Randa, how would you define success for the United States?
Uh, Look, I think depending on who you talk to, I mean, there are people who would say regime change is success. It's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen by now. And air power alone cannot force a regime like like the one in Iran to change, or cannot make it change. So that's out of the way. Regime change will happen only if the people of Iran rise up against, their regime and produce the kind of change that happened in the past to overthrow the Shah of Iran. So I think right now success is being defined in terms of degradation of Iranian military capacities, their navy, their missile production capacities, their missile launchers. I think most of these objectives have been already now obliterated. In fact, there is not much left in terms of military objectives for us to hit. They still have, the problem is that they still have that, 200, whatever, 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, which is buried somewhere deep down under a mountain in a series of tunnels in Isfahan. They still have that. So that can be used in the future to, reproduce whatever kind of
Right.
weapons they want to produce.
Well, that's what I wanted to get to. Can you, I guess we've heard multiple reasons as to why we went into that war. When I think about it, we had been negotiating with Iran for 22 years. We weren't getting anywhere. And it takes me back to the time when we were hoping that we would figure out a way to prevent North Korea from getting a nuclear weapon. Now we have Iran that has somehow stored this highly enriched uranium somewhere. It seems as though when you talk about the centrifuges, which spin and produce the highly enriched uranium, there's no report that those have been destroyed, damaged, taken out. And you
Not
have
at least not
uranium.
all of them. Not all of them. Not all of them. Not all
Yeah.
of them.
And
Yeah.
if you take some of the deposits of uranium in the country, it doesn't seem as though we've maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure that we've attacked those areas. Can America really declare a success if we don't make sure that the Iranian nuclear program is obsolete? And can that be done? Can that be done from the air? Or
It
and
cannot be done. Sorry.
and or would Israel have great interest? Obviously, would they do it alone to try to figure out how to to be able to find and take that material? That's like a 3-point question, I know, but isn't this
You know,
the
after,
isn't this the nub of it? Isn't this the most important part of the mission?
I mean, initially I thought, I mean, the mission kept changing in terms of its objectives, right? The first speech that was given by President Trump Saturday morning, if I remember, was when I was listening to it, it was clearly about regime change. And then we started seeing backtracking away from that mission objective, and we started hearing from Secretary Rubio. It was about degrading Navy, degrading missile launchers, production capacities, denying them the ability to produce a nuclear bomb is still one of the objectives. But again, as you said, Governor, they still have access to this, large amount of highly enriched uranium. A lot of the infrastructure of the nuclear program has been, obliterated, but it was obliterated in the last war in 2025. But they still have also the knowledge. I mean, you cannot eliminate knowledge. They still have scientists. They still have the technical know-how of working, of producing, highly enriched nuclear material, but also eventually of producing a nuclear bomb if they wanted to. Now, the late Supreme Leader had issued a fatwa, right, an edict saying it's not basically which prohibits the production of nuclear weapon. And the Iranians, whenever you talk with them, and the Iranian official would always say, there is a fatwa, it's our religious duty not ever to produce a nuclear weapon. Now, this Supreme Leader has been killed. And so this fatwa, is it still valid? In my opinion, that now the Iranian regime, whatever survives of it, right, including maybe the son of the Supreme Leader, or maybe not, whoever is going to be the Supreme Leader, will now be incentivized to produce a nuclear bomb and to become the North Korea of the Middle East. And so, in my opinion, that's going to be, in the short term, we can delay that process, but I think that's going to be their objective going forward in order to protect the regime. They are going to come to the realization that the only way they can protect this regime from future attack is to have a nuclear weapon and do like North Korea,
Randa, I'm not so sure. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm not so sure that these materials, not just the materials, but the ability to do it, the spinning of the centrifuges, that those centrifuges have been destroyed. I mean, I'm not sure that you can do that with just air power alone. I've had people tell me that the only way to really deal with it is you have to destroy it from the inside out, not the outside in. And that would require something on the ground. Now, it was my impression listening to this president, the president before him, the president before him, Iran is never going to get a nuclear weapon. Well, if we leave there, and I understand you can't put the genie back in the bottle when it comes to scientists, but if you destroy the centrifuges, which the Israelis did at one point, presumably, and you don't get the material, then what have you really achieved other than downgrading them? And when it comes to ballistic missiles, I've had people tell me the Russians would be willing to give them ballistic missiles. So what then would be achieved if we don't eliminate the nuclear program?
Not much, since the objective was to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon. And as long as they have this nuclear material, this highly enriched nuclear material, the know-how, the infrastructure, they will always have that ability to do that. And they will always use that as a threat also, I mean, maybe they want to be, people say to me they want to be a threshold state like Japan, they will never cross that threshold and go into the production of a nuclear weapon. But I think after this war, this Supreme Leader, this one now, if he survives, or the next one, will be quite incentivized to produce a nuclear weapon to protect the regime in the future. So is this campaign, was this military campaign successful? Using that criterion? No, it's not successful. It did not help us achieve the objective of preventing the Iranian regime from having nuclear weapon.
Well, I want to be clear. The people I talk to are by and large not inside the government. They're people who once were in the government, who have knowledge and who have been in think tanks like you, that have views about this. Well, it's very concerning to me because what I worry about, Randa, is we just sort of leave and we declare victory, but the threat to our children and our grandchildren is still there. Do you think that between U.S. intelligence and Israeli intelligence that they could figure out where that uranium is, where those centrifuges are, and take care of that matter? You don't think?
I mean, of course, but it requires to put special forces on the ground, in quite large numbers in a dangerous situation. Yes, I mean, at some point, I heard talk of sending special ops to, basically put their hands or to be able to, take possession, if we can put it this way, of the highly enriched uranium. I don't know if this plan is still in place, if it's deemed to be too difficult, too dangerous, but again, because the mission keeps evolving, now we hear the president saying, well, we have to end it. We have achieved most of the military objectives we wanted to achieve. So the sense I'm getting is that we are not going to go there. That's the sense I'm getting. We are not going to go there. That we're going, as you put it, Governor, we are going to declare victory. We did degrade their capabilities, whatever. And we're going to go into negotiations again. But in that situation, the Iranians are going to be asking, quite a lot. The Iranians now want firm assurances that they will never be attacked again by Israel or by the United States. They want sanctions relief. And the Iranians now are going to be representing the Iranian regime. It's going to survive. It's going to be weakened. But even while weakened, it's going to constitute its threat to the neighborhood. I mean, so we can pack up and leave. But guess who's going to be under constant threat from the Iranians? It's going to be the Saudis, it's going to be the Qataris, it's going to be the Emiratis, it's going to be the Kuwaitis. And they are right now very angry at us. They are angry at the Iranians, of course, because they are being attacked by the Iranians, but they are angry at us for dragging them into this war for once. But also they are angry at us because they understand that the scenario which they fear the most, which is a wounded, degraded, yet a regime, an Iranian regime that survives this war, while degraded, while weak, will continue to be a threat to their security.
Randa, if in fact they could seize the uranium and they have destroyed so much of the military infrastructure, you would then have a pretty particular, fantastic victory. You would free the world from the threat of them having a nuclear weapon. We would have degraded all the other defense, initially, at least the missiles, the launchers, those things, their Navy, whatever. But I think you got to have the 360 victory here. And maybe it's possible. Maybe they're planning it. Maybe you and I don't know what they're thinking. But where are the people of Iran now? We don't, what goes through their minds? The ones who were protesting, and they've got to be very bitter at what the regime did to themselves, to their families, but we're not hearing much, right? What's behind that? And of course, everybody's being bombed, so it's pretty hard to go outside, right?
Exactly. They are trying to survive. And the regime has made it very clear that through the Basij, which is a volunteer militia, which is part of their armed forces, they're going to, go hard against anybody who tries to protest against the regime under these times. And, if you look historically, when a country is attacked, no matter how much people hate the regime of that country, people will feel themselves under attack, and that will a little bit stiffen their resolve, not necessarily against the regime, but against the attacker. And so I think they are of a lot of people are in a way, they are, how to say, they are worried if they can survive this attack, this military attack. But at the same time, they are afraid of the regime because they saw what they did in few days, killing up to who knows how many, but thousands of civilian protesters, and they are worried that we are not going to get the job done, that we're going to pack up, leave them with this regime, with, although it's going to be weakened against Israel, for example, but it will still have means to suppress and kill people inside and to maintain control of the population. And that's where the people are calculating, they are trying to think of all these scenarios and think how they can survive under these conditions.
Yeah, Randa, I mean, my sense of the whole thing was we didn't want to have another North Korea in the Middle East. And I just wish they will be successful in completing the job. The question about the regime itself, the IRG, here they go and kill as many as, I don't know, 20 to 30,000 people in the streets. When you think about when the Soviet Union collapsed, at some point the military they wouldn't take orders. They laid down their guns. What is it that motivates them to just kill their own people, to just go through this hell? Are they making? Are these people enriching themselves? What holds them together?
Well, I mean, the commanders are definitely businessmen. They are the ones who have made a lot of money from government resources, and I mean, even the son of Khamenei, the one who now has become supreme leader, we have reports that he has like real estate portfolio in London and around the world worth 100 millions, right? And a lot of these commanders have control of a lot of the business monopolies in Iran. It's a vast country, and it used to be a very, very wealthy country with lots of resources, still with lots of oil resources. And so they have interest in surviving and maintaining the regime because it has enriched them. It has made them multimillionaires. Now, the people underneath them, and it's interesting because I was always thinking about Syria because
I was going to say to you, why did the Alawites at some point, they stopped fighting? So why there, where they were all, and they were in a position where it was actually existential threat to any Alawite, right, who had been repressing people, but yet at the end they sort of faded away. Why did that happen,
Yeah, because their leader packed up and left.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
Right now, the leadership did not pack up and leave. He died. I mean, Supreme Leader died in a military campaign. The rest of the leadership did not pack up and leave. And then the people underneath them, the rank and file, they will say to you, if they will, the way they think is that, what's going to happen to us is what we did to the people who were part of the old regime. Many of them were hanged. Many of them were killed. Now, a lot of the Shah, people around the Shah, were able to leave, to flee. Many of them came to the United States, went to Europe. This regime, its supporters cannot flee. Where are they going to go? Are they going to come to America? No. Are they going to go to Europe? No. I mean, at best, they can go to Lebanon maybe, or even, or Iraq. Nobody else will welcome them. So they have no other way but to fight in order to survive and to stay in the fight because they don't have an alternative.
Randa, thank you for taking the time, and we'll have your relatives in our prayers. We all will.
Thank you.
I hopefully at some point we can do this. I hope you enjoy this when we have a chance to chat. I know our people do enjoy it, and maybe we can do it again sometime. But you've been so generous with your time. I'm so thankful and grateful. And let's hope that this is going to be resolved in a way that's going to secure the entire world.
Thank you, Governor. It's always a pleasure to talk through these issues with you. Always. I always welcome your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you.